Hey, 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 it's Terry, Virginia's daughter, and today I'm going to be talking about this way or that way. Angela at Just Me and My Fabrics tagged me on this little fun game. You're given two choices and you pick either one way or the other. Some of these I'm like, I could go either way. So
That's about to happen.
anyway, let's get into this video. When I referenced the Love to Sew podcast, they kind of gave some statistics. I'll just flash up some stats because they didn't give them for everything. And then you'd be able to know about the poll that they took, or yeah, it was kind of like a poll. There are 4 topics, and each topic has several questions. So I'm going to look at my cards here. So topic 1 is, I don't know what topic 1 is. I only like shopping new when I'm traveling, and I think this is going to carry into another category, but I like shopping my stash. I have a lot of stuff. But what I will say is there's sometimes I'm like, there's nothing in here that I want. My stash is very nicely arranged, so I can pretty much see everything. And there are often times that I will try to look for something in particular that I want. When I think about a project, I think about the fabrics in my stash first. And then depending on if it was an inspiration piece that had a piece of fabric, if it was, let's say the pattern envelope, I'm like, I want it just like that. There's a green satin dress that I want to make. I don't have any green satin fabric. Not really. Not dark green. I have light green, but I don't have dark green. So it just depends on if it's not in my stash. So I will always shop my stash first. I have sewn more with paper patterns, like tissue paper, like the big 4, but I do like PDF patterns. I have a couple Brutta patterns. I think I have a Marfi pattern. Do you all remember Marfi? So with Marfi, it's an Italian company and you don't even have instructions. But the pieces are numbered. There's a system there that if you can read patterns and put them together. It says it's for the advanced sewist, but I just think you have to know how to put it together. Like there's numbering systems on there. I would say at this point in my sewing, paper is more prominent in my stash. I do have some PDFs, but I don't mind PDFs. You know what I mean? I don't mind putting them together. I don't know. Let's see. I do it more with tissue paper, but I don't mind PDF. Is that okay? Yeah. This way or that way, I'm in the middle. I could go either way. Okay. I have inherited a lot of patterns from my late mom, Virginia, and a lot of those patterns require tracing. You know, the big 4 patterns, they can be so inexpensive at times that, when they go on sale, you get another one if you cut the wrong size or you need a size. But lately, I have just been trying to up my tracing game. I have all the tools to do so. I think that if I want to, keep the sizes and all that, for older patterns, I'm going to trace them because I want to preserve that pattern. I would say there's a time for cutting and there's a time for tracing. Anytime I make a muslin, it's a wearable muslin because I figure if you do anything other than that, it's a waste of resources, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of just everything. And if I don't like it, I never make it again. You know, if I love it, then I'll just, you know, fit it or whatever. That's never happened. I've never done a muslin all the way through that I loved and made it all the way through again. I am working on something that could fit into that category, but right now that's not the case. The one thing I do though is try on a lot. So I didn't used to do that, but I try stuff on like at almost, you know, at every stage possible, just to make sure that if I have to make any adjustments, I do it. So not sew up the whole garment and then like, oh, this doesn't fit, like I did that quick sew dress. I would say you know, I could go either way. I don't buy fabric unless I'm traveling. So in store would be where I am now. I just recently went to New Britain, Connecticut, and I went to Affordable Fabrics and I bought like 4 cuts of fabric or something like that because I was traveling. And I don't know, usually when I go online it's because I need something special and I just do an online search, and if I see it, I buy it. If not, I might have to, you know, improvise or whatever the case may be. But I would say that I think in store, if I had to pick, because you know, you get to feel the fabric, touch the fabric, and yeah, fondle the fabric. I love wovens. Love, 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 love wovens. I have a lot of knits in my fabric though, in my collection. I think that knits just kind of pop out. I think sometimes knits have more designs to it, more, the fabric is more like, I like bold kind of, you know, bold fabrics. And I think sometimes knit can be, you know, just so bold, it catches my eye. Well, I mean, all fabrics can be bold, right? But knit, on the other hand, is very comfortable and stretchy and almost a little too stretchy. You kind of have to be careful what you make out of it because it's stretchy. But I would say hands down, I would say wovens. I never hang dry anything. I tumble dry everything. I like the idea, the nostalgia behind, you know, having a clothesline and hanging your clothes on the clothesline and it smelling fresh, you know. But it never happens that way these days. Like, it's like, ooh, this smells like outside. I should have dried it in the dryer. So until I figure out how to hang dry clothes and still obtain a, you know, that fresh smell, you know what I mean? Because if you take the time to hang dry your fabric or clothes, you know, there has to be a benefit because it takes longer. It takes longer to do. It takes longer for the clothes to dry. And I just remember the last time I did that, I'm like, this stinks. I'm gonna have to wash it again. Oh my goodness, now this is interesting. I'm a cutter, so I prefer cutting because it's what I know, it's what I am familiar with. Tracing, on the other hand, I think there's like an art to it. There's like a skill to it. I mean, I messed up an entire garment one time, had to throw the fabric away. Beautiful fabric, someone had gave it to me. I think I was gonna make Vogue 1467. And I'm like, everybody else is tracing, I'm gonna trace too. I messed it up. The cuts were so inaccurate. You know, I'm like, I mean, inaccurate to the point I could not have even gone and cut with scissors to fix it. So I was like, I'm throwing it away. So I would love to trace, you know, and there are some things that I trace, like strips of bias or something like that. Something that's really, you know, no curves and all that stuff. But I'm a scissors kind of girl. If you are an excellent tracer, I would say do a video on tracing. Even if you don't have a channel, just do that video and I bet you it'll go viral because a lot of people don't have it. Now, like with anything, practice becomes permanent, we say in education. So, you know, if I practice enough, I could do it. One thing I realized though is the blade is everything in your rotary cutter. If your blade is not sharp, you could forget it. It's not even gonna work. And I don't know how often you have to change blades, you know, because I don't do it that much. But I started out with a couple of like dull blades and I'm like, oh no. And then when I thought I had a good blade, I still couldn't keep a steady hand. So I'm a cut girl, scissors. I always follow pattern instructions. Always, always, and always. I think that if you do a review, then you should do a review based on how the pattern instructions are written. I think that people take a lot of time to create these pattern instructions, and even though they're maybe not as simple, they're kind of confusing at times, I find it very challenging to follow the pattern instructions exactly. You know, there's other ways you can do stuff. Of course there are. But if you follow the pattern instructions to the T, it's like, I think that was successful. If there's something that I think I can't figure out, it becomes a challenge for me to figure out. I want to stick directly to the instructions. It's like, no, I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to do it a different way. I'm not going to do it my way. I'm going to figure this out. Facings, hands down. And this is another area that I'm talking about being challenged. So you know how sometimes you do facings, and if you slip stitch or hand stitch, you can see like some of the stitching on the outside, and sometimes facings don't lay flat. But I feel like with anything else, there's like an art to it, like a skill. So once you get it, you got it. I love facings. I think facings let the garment hang nicely. They add structure. Bias tape is okay. I mean, you can always use, I think bias tape is the easy way out. So I think bias tape is, I don't want to deal with these facings, so I'm going to use bias tape. I'm a facings kind of girl. I like them. I guess it just depends, right? So, you know, French seams are, you know, usually reserved for fine fabrics, you know, silky fabrics, sheer fabrics, and things like that. But I have put French seams because I didn't want to serge. The more you use them, the easier they become. I mean, they're not difficult in the first place, but I guess the more you use them, the more used to using them you become. And so then it just becomes part of your sewing where you use French seams. I don't use them for everything, but I made a pair of cargo pants. I'm making a pair of cargo pants, and I decided I'm going to use French seams on this. I didn't want to serge it. The color on my serger is tan. You know, I only have one serger. And the color on the thread color is not conducive to what I was using, so I used French seams. There are times that serge seams make a garment look cheap to me on the inside. So, I don't know. I use both. I don't have a preference. It's just how I'm feeling. The garment has to speak to you to tell you what kind of seams it prefers.
Let the garment speak to you about the seams.
Okay? They're about the same to me. I mean, to me, this boils down to, because a fly is a fly. Yeah, so a button fly is whether you want to sew on buttons or do you want to install a zipper. That doesn't matter to me. I would do a button fly or a zip fly. I don't have a preference. By hand, hands down. There's something about sewing on a button. Wrapping it around the button to make sure it has a little wiggle room, because you know you don't sew a button flat to a garment. You have to have a little bit of space, a little bit of ease in the button, the way it's sewn on, so you can go in and out of the buttonhole. So I would say button by hand. I've done it by machine. I know how to do it by machine, but I prefer to do it by hand. Sew in every time. Sometimes I think I'm just old school, and some things I don't want to change when it comes to my sewing. Fusible interfacing, you know, you have to get it right. I mean, there's a chance that the interfacing presses on itself. I mean, to me, there's so much that can go wrong with fusible interfacing. Now, I don't sew interfacing around the edges, the perimeter of the piece. I baste. I don't actually sew it because, you know, the interfacing can shift. And I think that's a disadvantage to both ways. It can shift when you're pressing it. It can shift when you sew it. But I use a basting stitch so that when the time comes, if I need to adjust the interfacing, I can remove the stitches and do it that way. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but something like that. The last two are kind of similar. I can kind of group these together because what happens is I don't do it all at once, but I might not necessarily do it as I go. It's when I get to the pressing that I may snip. There are times that I snip, but it's not always as I go. So I find myself that when I press, I'm snipping also. But pressing, I will try to do several seams before I press them.
So I don't sew, press, sew, press, sew, press, sew, press. I don't.
I try to press in segments, but not all at once, but not after each seam. So hopefully that makes sense. Same with snipping. Daytime, hands down. I only sew late night when I have to. I made a video too of late night sewing habits, kind of some of the habits that I have developed when I do have to sew late night, but it's not my preference. It's daytime. Listen, listen, listen. Slow and steady.
Slow and steady. Slow and steady.
Wins the race every single time. I used to be a runner. 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 I want to get back to it too. You know what I mean? But once you've been out so long, I don't know. I walk these days. Yeah, slow and steady for sure. Well, here's the thing. I don't tidy after every project, but I don't have one big cleaning session after a bunch of projects. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have a simple project. What you gotta do is pick up, you know, straighten up. I'd have to say I'm a one big cleaning session kind of girl. I only tidy as I go to get stuff out of my way. If it's like, this is getting on my nerves, I need to get this out of the way. But for the most part, I will just complete my project or two.
Oh my goodness, this is a mess. I can't take it.
I end up cleaning. Listen, happy sewing. Hopefully it won't be too long before I'm able to make another video. I'm not done with my pattern project. I uploaded all of the patterns, pictures, descriptions, prices to a program and lost all that data. So I'm gonna have to do that again. I still have the pictures, but I just have to kind of do the descriptions and all that. I've not forgotten. I like YouTube. I really do. I like making videos, but time is of the essence. And I'm sure you can attest to that as well. So if you don't want to do a video, but you're like, hey, this is what I do, this is what I do, put them in the comments. We can have 100 comments if we need to. Thanks for joining me today. And until next time, take care.